It's the Undress Show. Yes, it's Wednesday night. Undress recorded in front of an unmitigated semi-alive audience at Conroy's Emporium, where you can catch anything your heart desires. Hello, my fellow Undress. My name's Jeremy Taylor, and I'm here to host the talk show that pretends to care. It's not been a good day. I woke up this morning feeling limp. I did. Then the doorbell rang. I opened the door in my dressing gown. No, I'm not going to go there. No, I'm not. All right, it's a funny place to have a door, isn't it, in your dressing gown? Anyway, get on with it. I know. I was going to tell... All right, no, well, look. So we're getting hundreds of hits every day on the Undress website. Clearly, this underlines the notion that thousands of folk who watch porn are, in fact, a seriously discriminating bunch. Our undressed but not entirely naked panel today include barred from scaring young Republican voters. Kathleen Taylor is with us. Having just waved goodbye to his mentor, the most interesting man in the world, as he embarks on his Mars trip, the very wise Dr. Orlando.
Hello.
And, of course, the Dark Lord of European pheromones, Ivo Ivanov. Guests to the panel this week.
What timing! Well done, Ivo!
Having just been thrown out of the Russian army, Chris Magerkurth is with us.
Ni hao.
And my friend Brennan Conroy, who will want to talk about racing cars. But first, what's been going on here at Conroy's Bar and Emporium since we last spoke? Well, the lawyers have debarred us from talking about the girl fight on Monday. Also, apparently, three guys were talking in the bar. Two of them were talking about the amount of control they have over their wives, while the third remained quiet. And after a while, one of the first two turned to the third and said, well, what about you? What sort of control do you have over your wife? The third guy said, I'll tell you. Just the other night, my wife came to me on her hands and knees. The first two guys were amazed. What happened then? They asked. She said, get out from under the bed and fight like a man. Then the police were called. A policewoman asked the suspect, what do you mean he was on your bed gasping for breath and calling your name? The suspect replied, I obviously didn't hold the pillow down long enough. Well, the lady police officer asked why, if she just had sex with him, why did she want to kill him? And the suspect replied, obviously to stop him snoring before he starts. No, control yourself. This is not one of those shows. This show is about class. So let's get on with it.
Because we all know so much about that subject.
It's always about class.
It is with as much inconsequential feeling that I can muster from my indescribable intestinal nether regions that I approach our first subject.
Inwards.
Yes, phobias. We all have things that we really don't like. Bananas, bridges, heights, quicksand, hard-boiled eggs, flying, colds. People who turn up with colds. You know, why do they do that? Why do they fly in an airplane when they've got a contagious something or other? Non-flush lavatories is another one on my list.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. What else? Barbers. I hate barbers. You know, they say, good afternoon, sir, and they put something around your neck. And it's as if they're going to try and choke you. Or sharks. I don't like sharks. Now, I'm interested in what other phobias people have.
But isn't phobia the definition an irrational fear? Because being afraid of sharks is extremely rational.
Right, yeah.
Unless you're on land and you're afraid of sharks. You know?
Jeremy
if you're in Kansas and you're
is afraid of Clinton Lake because of sharks.
Okay,
it's
that's
an
a phobia.
inland small lake.
That's a phobia, but clogged toilets is
he
pretty
worries
irrational.
about swimming pools.
Yeah. Oh, really?
I was trying to explain to Jeremy before the show that most of the stuff he's talking about is just being prissy.
Yeah. well, you know what? Actually, it's not irrational to be afraid of sharks in Kansas because I saw Sharknado. And apparently, you can suffer a shark bite from a tornado. Yeah. There's also they're making now Sharkalanche.
Yeah.
Did you hear that? They're making
really?
Sharkalanche. Yeah.
No.
It's an avalanche that basically what happens is, from what I understand, the plot revolves around a scientific tank that studies sharks on top of a mountain. An avalanche brings it down. Bam, you have a sharkalanche. All kinds of mayhem.
You're speaking plot kind of loosely there, using that word.
Well, yeah, of course.
No,
of
you're
course. Well,
implying that
Sharkalanche.
this has a plot
Yeah.
in it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Has any movie ever had a plot? That's
Well, I'm going to make you lot do this. You know, I've given you some of the things that I really feel very uncomfortable about. And so, Chris, what do you feel uncomfortable about? And if you don't tell me the truth, I shall ask your wife, who is sitting nearby.
Large crowds make me uncomfortable.
Agoraphobia.
Did you say large crabs?
Large crowds. I mean,
Crabs.
No.
Crowds.
Crowds. But crowds
well-
are not bad.
Is this because of your Russian heritage that you can't speak English properly? Do you mean crowds or crabs?
Crowds.
Crowds, right.
CROWDS.
So you don't like being in crowded places?
That's a
No.
very common fear. I think
That's all right. We're
I
at
think this
Conroy's.
one at the top, like
Oh,
agoraphobia, claustrophobia is another one that's very common. It's small places. Then arachnophobia is very popular, and then I don't know what the fear of snakes is, but that's popular.
Snakeophobia.
We'll just call it snakeophobia.
That's my wife.
Okay, now
She's
your
afraid of
wife
snakes.
is.
Yeah.
Your wife is. Well, now what other things? I really will. I'll ask her if you don't tell me. Are you actually concerned about boiled eggs? Or
No, I love boiled eggs.
What sort of things don't you like? Other things don't.
I
just
Wait a
tell
minute,
me
I don't
loud
like
crap
stupid
lies.
people.
Yeah, is this phobias
I don't like
or
tomatoes.
dislikes? Because that's
Don't
a,
like
that's a
tomatoes.
different that's a
But
different topic altogether.
If it's phobias, though, I have a fear of heights,
Right.
which I challenge all the time by climbing trees and going up in high places and looking down.
That's actually.
Do you find yourself being desensitized by it?
Yes and no.
Yes, when he passes out.
I still feel that nervous tingle all over my body when I'm getting close to the edge or when I'm climbing a tree, but I know that I'm pushing my limits, and so I'm trying to be more than just that fear.
So that's
Brennan,
actually,
what do you dislike intensely?
There's a couple of things. Well, one is with him going off tomatoes, onions as well.
Onions.
I hate
You
onions.
cannot deal with onions.
But do you
right?
just
Onions
like
are
or do you
not-
have
God's
phobia of
food.
them?
What?
I guess not phobia. This one, I guess one that's kind of weird for me is I have an intense fear of letting people down. Like even in just positions that don't seem like they would be a position like that. Like I still have a fear of letting someone down, and it's weird. I don't get it from
Well,
I
you don't get it from your father. I can tell you.
No, I think that's where my
sad.
fear.
Isn't
No,
that
I think
sad?
that's where my fear comes from because I've seen him all my life, and I think, oh God, I don't want to end up like that.
Oh!
Oh
And then the other-
no, he's standing right
look,
behind
there's
you.
a little tear coming down his eye.
That's sad. Oh,
That's all right.
oh,
Add
God,
salt to
Roy.
the food.
Kathleen, what are yours? I mean, I know a couple
I
of
have
yours.
no
so tell-
phobias whatsoever.
Oh,
No,
oh,
I'm,
so
I
you-
am I'm a
so you-
perfect being, and I always have been, and I always will be. And I want you to remember that, dear.
And don't you challenge
So-
it,
Yeah.
Taylor.
So driving across bridges is not a problem for you.
Well, I just. well.
Hesitation.
Well, if I close my eyes tightly, it doesn't bother me.
Well, it's still a phobia if it's an irrational fear.
It's
And
when
that
I'm driving
includes
that
if
that's a
she's
problem.
driving.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
can you still drive with your eyes closed?
It's difficult. It's difficult.
Oh yeah, I do have one other phobia that makes a lot of sense that I know is popular: needles.
Oh, yes, this is a very, very common.
I would,
yeah.
like I am not able to.
Sharp objects.
I'm
needles.
not able to donate blood because I'm
I got news
too
for you.
terrified of it.
That is a phobia of all men.
Mm.
Women don't
I'm
have
not.
it.
I don't have
Men
that fear.
do.
Actually, I've
okay.
only
I
ever
never had
known
that
women. Yeah, in my
You're admitting
personal
that?
life,
I'm sorry, I'm old.
it has
Not of
only ever
needles.
been women that I've known that have had fear of needles.
But there was a
Really?
story that
Really?
Jeremy read recently to us about the soldiers that were fainting from. I think you read it. Soldiers that were fainting because they were about to get a shot, and so that's very, very interesting. I think I have aviophobia. Like I'm afraid of flying, which is bizarre because I've flown 60 times over the Atlantic Ocean.
Right.
And
What do you do? Do you
I
take
just,
pills?
No,
Booze?
no,
What?
I hate the pills. I hate the booze. I just tough it out. You know, I just, but I struggle those 8 hours 9 hours in the air. I constantly struggle. I'm stressed out.
And the month prior.
Yeah, that's right. It starts a month before I fly, and it's very unpleasant. But what can you do? And actually, you brought up a good point. This is the actual scientific method of removing phobias is this desensitization, like slowly, gradual desensitization. It's actually a term that I use for this, but that's what you do. You face your fear, but not at once.
Yeah, you
slowly.
gotta do it little by little.
Yeah. So
I
that's
find when I'm flying, and I hate flying,
yeah.
is the thing is, I'm usually so mad at the woman next to me who's got a cold or a screaming child that it sort of puts me off, worrying about.
It displaces
Yes,
your anxiety.
thank you.
or
That's a
your-
big word I wasn't
Yeah.
going to use.
I hate
The-
airports.
Two syllables.
The
The
flying doesn't bother me. It's the airports and all the process involved in getting on the airplane.
Yes, the stress
Lewis.
and
You're very wise. Help us out here. What are some things that we shouldn't, that are normal fears?
Well, I always have to start with white people.
That is
And-
actually a phobia. There is a phobia.
Really.
Yeah.
I'm kind of tan, not really white.
Yeah,
So-
a really white person would be kind of scary.
And
Yeah,
that's
it would be.
the most rational of all.
What do you have against albinos? That's what I.
The
There are
the
people
pink
out there,
eyes. It's a little bit freaky. No,
Chris will say something when we're driving. He's driving, say something like, "Come on, white people." I'm like, "Please."
White people are the worst drivers.
This is,
There's no doubt about it.
This voice you can hear from the side is Lynn, and she's Chinese. So just to show that we do actually have a genuinely,
Genuinely what?
I'll come back to that in a minute. When
he's
I can
he's
think
looking
of
for the word
International
multicultural
cast.
international cast.
multicultural,
Oh, okay. Right.
international. So, Lewis,
Panel.
you don't like what?
I can't even start the list of things that I don't like. I can say that I have an irrational fear of large insects. And that's the only thing
They're
that
yummy.
Yeah, that's my fear. They will somehow end up in my mouth. I used to have a fear of spiders, but I kind of outgrew that, and I don't really have any reason for why I no longer fear them like I used to. But everything that you guys named, I can handle without batting an eye. But if you get a moth that's got a wingspan of about greater than an inch or so, I will run out of this room screaming like a little girl.
You should never freaking go to Florida, man. Florida sucks. Like, I was in Orlando once, stuck for a couple of weeks. There were cockroaches that would tackle you.
Oh, yeah.
Man, there were some ridiculous things. There were, I played tennis. There were mosquitoes that I could easily confuse for the tennis ball.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
You
absolutely.
know, it's just
I
ridiculous.
used to live in Miami. One time, I woke up in the middle of the night because there was noise right next to the bed.
Kissing cockroach.
No, it was two large cockroaches, the kind with the eyes on their back, having a fight.
Oh,
And they were noisy.
yeah. Were they
Right.
cursing?
Oh, I screamed. Yeah, I did freak out over that one.
Oh, my God.
I
Yeah.
road trip to like the Tampa Bay area pretty much every year, and
Yeah.
I hate the amount of mosquitoes. Like, not even the size, just the amount. Like,
Guys, there was I was in Orlando in April, and I was unfortunate enough to hit that one time a year where the place gets overrun by the so-called love bugs. Are you familiar with the love bugs?
Made by
This is the
B&W.
most disturbing thing ever. It's this bug which appears to have two heads and tons of legs. And what it is, it was genetically engineered at University of Florida to supposedly fight mosquitoes. Instead, it went rogue and is not destroying any mosquitoes. And for a couple of weeks in April,
Palin.
a couple of weeks in April, just overruns the place. They don't bite you, but they swarm you, and it's extremely unpleasant. It's not one bug; it's always two bugs. They always have to be doing the deed. That's why they call them love bugs.
So it looks like two heads, but it's actually
Yes,
two that are
it's
just
two
permanently
bugs that
mating.
are permanently mating,
Oh,
and they have to be.
God.
And
I've
then
known teenagers like that.
yeah, sure. And then the damage they do is to your car because there's so many of them. There's clouds of them, and they get stuck to the windshield and
It's
to
the
the
love
front
juice.
front of the car. And then
That's not a
and
pleasant
then
image.
you can't wash them. They're like glue. Their blood's like glue, so they get stuck to your car. And if you don't take them off, in a couple of days they destroy the paint on your car. So you have to get and scrub them off and
Well,
they're
that's
very
another
hard to
source
get.
of glue. We could quit using horses and just collect bugs.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I have phobia of
Yeah, we got
phobias.
plenty of horses to glue.
If you do have phobia of phobias, do you actually have a
Cereal.
phobia?
That's good glue.
yes,
too.
actually, that is
Yeah.
that is actually a recognized phobia known as
No, it's not. Really?
Phobophobia. Yeah.
phobophobia. Yeah,
Wow, that's interesting.
yeah.
Well,
Nah.
talking about phobias, I'm going to move on just a little bit before we get to the serious stuff. In the state of Kansas, where we're broadcasting this podcast from,
We're in a state
I've
of disarray.
personally not found anyone, Republican or Democrat or parent, who supports Governor Brownback. And I can't
Brownbackophobia.
understand, but whose fault is that?
Whose fault? I wonder whose fault is
he's
it.
married, surely, he has children, people must love him. So why have we got a governor, right, that everybody hates?
I know whose
'Cause
fault
we're
is it.
idiots?
I know whose fault is it exactly. It's his parents who had love 9 months before he was born. That's whose fault it is.
I mean, the logical answer is that we live in the eastern part of Kansas, which tends to be more liberal. Go west, and you see why he gets elected every year.
So, Brendan, why if we go west does he get elected?
Well, because the western part of Kansas is so much more conservative than the eastern part of Kansas.
In what way?
And in his last election bout,
He barely won.
he barely won, but he was able to paint, what's the guy's name?
Davis.
Paul Davis.
Yep.
As an Obama crony, and the citizenry of Kansas could not abide that.
Yeah.
And still, this man was so unpopular. He barely won in one of the most Republican states against a completely unknown Democrat in Kansas. Almost. So that tells you how horribly unpopular this man is. If the elections were run right now, I don't know. I mean,
But whose fault is it that he is governor? Everyone hates him, except his children and wife.
We can only blame
you're-
ourselves. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
I didn't vote for him, but I mean, I probably could have lobbied more against him. I probably could have stood up more at more town halls and meetings, etc., and said this guy's not worth voting for, but I didn't.
And you're
See,
making
I'm
a
in the
huge
wonderful-
assumption,
I'm in
thinking
the
that his
wonderful
wife and
position where
children
I
love
can-
him.
no one can blame me because I'm not allowed to vote.
And people have blamed me because I say vote third party.
yeah.
Yeah, so people
Ooh,
have.
that's-
Yeah.
No.
Brendan,
not-
what's your view? I'm sorry, Lewis, what's your view?
My view is that it's us, it's the voters. We have put ourselves in this situation by letting bigotry and a lack of self-interest dictate who we're going to vote for. So we end up with quite possibly the worst of the worst.
I've noticed, incidentally, that your hat is on the wrong way around. You've got the sharp end facing forward. Is
Yeah,
that
I know.
for any
I
particular
decided
reason?
It's a different. It's
Yeah.
not the Congo.
There isn't,
No,
there
it
isn't
is a
a game
candle, yeah.
going on.
It is.
That's
No,
better.
there you
He's
go.
changed it around now,
Yeah,
so we can.
so that I look normal,
So
like
more,
my normal
more
self.
useful. Yes, right.
uh-huh.
Dr. Lander, Kathleen, what's your view? So we know how you feel about Republicans. If we want to go back to the previous.
I would like to know why there's a mathematician in Wichita who wants to check the results against the actual ballots.
Who's
Well,
that
to be
mathematician?
fair,
Elaborate.
wouldn't there always be? I'm sorry, shouldn't there always be a mathematician who wants to check the
Yeah,
check the
that's a
results
good
against
point.
the ballot?
I
And it's not
wish.
being allowed to.
I think that's the important question, that the
Yep.
voter results are not being allowed to be touched.
I want to
Probably
move
should
on
go back
to
to
a more,
paper ballots. Makes it harder to actually do the fraud.
Yeah.
I want to move on to maybe a serious subject now. And Maria Walton is quiet-spoken. Her lungs have been wrecked by her illness. Her respirator doesn't help. But she's resolute. Yes, she says, I would like to see my parents prosecuted. Why? They deserve it. She pauses, takes a breath. She's 20. She's frail, permanently disabled, and she has to carry an oxygen tank bolted to her, literally, to allow her to breathe.
Oh man.
She has screws in her bones to anchor the breathing device. She may not be able to survive very much longer unless she has a complete heart and lung transplant, and because she's in the circumstance she's in, extremely risky procedure. And all of this could have been prevented in her infancy by closing a small congenital hole in her heart. She was known as a hole in the heart baby. The problem is that Maria's parents are fundamentalists.
Learn to speak the language, Jeremy.
Yeah, I know, sorry. Her parents were fundamentalist Mormons who went off the grid.
Yeah.
What I'm interested in is the shield laws. Shield laws for culture and religious purposes, protecting parents from prosecution when their beliefs hurt their children. It's very difficult to be a surgeon in an emergency room in many states in America and many countries across Europe where you need to carry out an operation, but you can't get hold of the parents, or you know perfectly well that we're dealing with some sort of religious outfit who say, no, that child can't have a blood transfusion. Now, I know in England, for example, where I come from, surgeons, emergency room surgeons, have, as a matter of course, a judge almost on tap. So when they start to get the feeling that there's something wrong, they call the judge, and they get a court order to protect the child before the parents can remove the child. I'm interested in what the panel thinks, because these shield laws are being brought in as we speak across various states in the country.
What do you mean being brought in? They're
The-
actually phasing out.
No, they're phasing.
A lot of them are going out.
And they are bringing some in as well. Idaho, for example.
Idaho's been stuck with it for a long time. I'm not sure that they're getting any worse than they were. Other states have got rid of them. We're down to not a whole lot that have really extreme religious exemption laws, but a lot have moderate ones. But I think it might be going the right way, unless things turn around in that as they have done in some other things.
You know, that got me thinking, that horrible story got me thinking about a question. A question that's not only existential but probably judicial as well. It is a question about whether you own your child's life the way you own your own life. Do you have that that huge ownership of a human life, and you decide what to do? You have the executive power, because this to me is on the cusp of murder. There's a blurred line here between indecision and murder. You know, by allowing this disease to take its progress, you're basically murdering your child. And that's all because of your belief in a sky god up there that has the ultimate power to decide whether you're going to live or die.
There's still only about a half a dozen states that actually provide religious exemptions even from felony murder charges that in other states would stick.
So here's a question I have for you guys. If this family was not Mormon, if they were Satanist, and they made that same decision, would there be a different consequence? Would there be a different outcome of this?
I would say yes, because of the one reason. It's because certain groups have political power, and although small, Mormons have some form of political power. And it's most religious groups. Christianity has political power, Judaism has political power, Mormonism has political power, Islam has some form of political power. And if a group has political power, you're not going to want to anger any part of that. And once you get into that point, you're not going to change. You're going to try not to change anything because you're worried about losing the vote.
It is
I'm
amazing.
gonna take the opposite side to this, and I say this with everyone, please bearing in mind that I grew up as a Jehovah's Witness, so my family was one of those strange families that did not believe in blood transfusions. I would rather die than receive a blood transfusion. One of the founding
You
principles...
would still.
No. Give me
right.
Evo's blood even.
Yeah.
Right.
I'll be that
That's a death sentence.
Not mine, because
However-
it'd be straight gin and tonic.
However, one of the
Yeah, true.
cornerstone principles of our law, if that's not the complete wrong term, you guys will catch my meaning, is sovereignty of self. We do not take it as we would take it as an offense, as an impropriety if the federal law mandated that we all got cell phone chips embedded in our head.
Sure.
We are required to provide for our own medical care, medical expenses, what have you, and parents are given that responsibility for their children. It's not even just come closer when it's your turn to speak. Parents are given that responsibility, and if we require people to make that decision about themselves, if we require that parents be that entity of judgment for their children, if parents make that call, just like for the people that want to have Dr. Kevorkian come and say, please stop extending my life at the cost of my pain. On the other side of that, we have to give these parents the medical leeway, the medical authority to say, I don't want this particular set of care for my kids. Now, that is not to say that we lose the ability for judges to override that and say these parents are obviously crazy, but there needs to be a process in place for that.
But if you wanna drag yourself to the Middle Ages, where people were dying from strep throat or a rusty nail, you'd go ahead and do that. But this is a different human life. This is not the poor innocent child's choice. You know, you make the choice for yourself, but the child should have all the benefits of a modern society. We live in quite possibly the most advanced society, medically and economically, and
Definitely with porn.
yeah, and pornographically, of course.
Ecumenically.
But for you, if you want to get stuck 500 years ago, if you want to go that way, if you want to go live the primeval, the medieval ways, go ahead and do it. But don't do that to your child. You know?
Lynn from China.
Right. I have two questions for you, Louise.
Mm-hmm.
A, I'm not from here. I'm foreigner. So why you don't believe in blood transfusion? B, do you make your children or your family follow that rules?
I come from a family that does not believe in blood transfusions. So as a kid, if we were faced with a life or death situation where blood transfusions were the only option to guarantee that we would be alive, we would just simply not take it. And if we died as a result, then that was just the result.
That's God's will.
It was a religious admonition in, I can't think of the exact scripture, but there's a scripture in the Bible where God is giving the dietary restrictions to the Israelites, and he basically says after they come from the point where they can't eat any meat, the scripture basically reads, "You may now eat meat, but abstain from the blood." This is like a scripture in the Old Testament. And so because of that, my childhood Christian religion, Jehovah's Witnesses, tries to follow the Bible as closely as possible. And since that admonition was never lifted, Jehovah's Witnesses, as a general rule, do not take blood. They try to abstain from blood at any moment possible. And this leads to all kinds of philosophical quandaries, like if you fry a piece of chicken, don't say it's because I'm black. I'm sure you all have had fried chicken before.
I love fried chicken.
If you fry a piece of chicken, there's blood that comes out of the chicken once it gets heated up. Like, does that mean you're not supposed to eat the chicken? These are the kinds of questions that, like, my religion as a child, I'm not a part of that religion anymore. But as a child, these are the kinds of questions that the religion that I grew up with would tussle with on a daily basis.
But there's also all kinds of evidence that, although that's the teaching of a lot of these smaller sects and cults or whatever, the individuals who are involved in that are often just bowing to peer pressure within their group.
Not just the small religions. If you,
whichever.
Yeah, I mean,
But,
I can tell you, most of the Muslims that I know, the running joke was, "Do you want to come over to my house for some beef and pork?"
Yeah.
Or some pork and beer. Sorry, pork and beer.
is it a truly held religious conviction, or is it peer pressure from a group that has different motives?
Well, I think that that's a valid question. I think it will depend on the person that you're talking to and what their personal relationship is. So it's hard for me to answer. But kind of going back to the topic at hand, what if you really believe it? Like, what if it's not peer pressure? What if it is a absolute belief that engaging in something that violates the body, that enters the body and violates the body of your own volition is a sin, is a mortal sin.
Then maybe some education would help, because there's something like 900 times the death of in childbirth among people who belong to some of the more extreme cults,
but
in general the general public.
We have this clause of the First Amendment that says Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion or the free exercise thereof.
Yeah.
And restrictions on religious practice can get us to a slippery slope where the government starts saying these are the ways of thinking and ways of believing that we
and then there's child
are
protection
going to force on everybody. And
so,
no, and I agree.
Where does religious belief and child protection come to each other? I mean, where do they intersect?
Go ahead. Sorry.
I mean, I agree with Ivo that we don't, or Evo, is it?
Yeah, Evo.
that we don't want to go all the way back to
Sorry, think evil.
Evo. Yeah. I think Evo Shandor from Ghostbusters. So.
Or Devo.
We don't want to go all the way back to the Middle Ages, but there still should be
Some kind of respect for.
some kind of respect for, well, like Lewis said, people who truly believe. And yes, children are probably going to be affected, but
Children are already affected right now.
Children are dying.
and I still don't believe that just because we're a technologically advanced society, we have all the answers. Because when I read about this topic, I thought about all of the cultures that were destroyed by the West, basically because they came in and said, you're not like us, you're not as evolved as us, you're still like animals, and we're going to teach you the way to be human beings. And all of this culture and art and who knows, all kinds of stuff that was lost because we said, this is the way to be.
Yeah, but at the same time, we live in a society where SRS will take away your child, if you raise a hand or curse at them, and yet we allow this level of neglect. And that's really, we talked about blurred lines. There's clearly a blurred line between neglect and a crime here.
But it does seem very much that if you live, for instance, in Oregon, and you don't allow your child to be treated medically,
Yes.
I'm talking about something more serious than aspirins.
Yes.
Then you can be found criminally negligent.
Yeah,
and
I
if
agree.
the child dies,
That's good.
Negligent homicide.
There's a separation
However,
between sanity and religion in Oregon.
Next
Good.
door, Idaho presents a polar opposite to Oregon. Republicans who enjoy an effective permanent majority in the state house.
Yeah.
But however, the governor started a task force on children at risk, and he personally recommended change. He said religious freedoms must be protected, but vulnerable children must also be appropriately protected from unnecessary harm and death. So a legislator decides to put up a repeal bill. The chairman of the State Health and Welfare Committee refused to even grant it a hearing, thus killing it.
Well, there's
Well, then, do you ask? Let's take the question another direction. What about non-life-threatening stuff? Does the state have a duty to enforce parents giving their kids antihistamines for allergies, or forcing them on diets to make them thinner,
Or vaccinations.
or vaccinations?
Vaccinations. Is a parent allowed to beat a child generally? No. Is a parent allowed to beat a child if they say their religion told them to beat the devil out of them? In some places, yes.
I'm sorry, just for one quick question. Lynn, did I answer both your questions? I remember you asking me. What was the second question?
The second one is, do
That's
you
typical, that
make
is.
your family follow the rules?
Gotcha. I do not now because I am no longer a part of that religion. I am technically what the religion calls an apostate, which means I was exposed to the truth, but I turned my back on it. So that means when God comes down and kills all the evil people, I will be one of them. So,
And how do your family,
Oh, you
the
can go
rest
with
of
us
your
then.
family, you have, I know, a brother who's a doctor.
he's also apostate.
Right.
Yeah.
And what about the rest of the family?
Well, my mom is primarily the person. My mom and dad at this point are primarily the people that still practice this religion, and so it leads to some interesting situations, like my now wife and I lived together without being married for 15 years prior to being married, and my mother and father would not come and stay at our house because
sorry
we
about
were
that.
living in sin. Just kind of
It's the way to be, man. Living in sin.
kept them from visiting
Back
for
to Lynn. Let's
15
ask
years.
Well, the Chinese are kind of like that too. I mean, this is off record, but
No, there's only
was-
about 30,000 people listening to this.
well,
so, you know.
it's
on record.
different.
Yeah.
We were engaged, but I moved in with him 2 months before we got married.
Brazen. Brazen.
No, it's just it's just part of the thing.
How dare you? Probably ate pork too. It's interesting how many religions are obsessed with certain foods, not having them.
Yeah.
We know that Hebrew religion is obsessed with certain things. We know that Muslims are. Hindi don't, they consider the beef, and the
beef.
cow sacred. It's very bizarre. And of course, the religion of the sane people, thou shalt not eat Conroy's food.
God. I was just going to say the religion of America won't eat dog. It's probably perfectly
Or
good
insects.
food.
You know, the
Or
only
insects.
thing really that that should be mandated not to be eaten is just people. You know, do not eat people.
I've seen some
Eat
people who
hang
probably
on,
be.
hang on.
There's certain
Lovely.
scenarios
Don't-
though where you
don't-
just don't have a choice.
Well,
Yeah.
I'll tell you, the Chinese eat anything, everything except people. Not yet.
Yes, not yet. Yeah.
Okay, so sort of going back to what we were talking about before, a couple interesting things that I noticed. Like when we talk about the kids and their parents refusing treatment, I noticed that you, my open-minded friend, immediately refer to that as neglect.
Yeah.
But the question is it neglect? If this is, let me paint an example. I have I had a friend that had cancer. He died from the cancer, but he talked to one doctor that said you need to go on this set of treatment, this set of treatment, this set of treatment, this set of treatment. He talked to another doctor that said that first doctor was 180 degrees off the mark. You need to do this step, then this step, then this step. Doesn't he have the responsibility to pick one of those courses or to pick none of those courses?
Well, sure, but we're talking about neglect as relative to the story that was told to us that it would have taken a small procedure to close the opening in the heart valve and save this, because this is a sentence, a death sentence for this lady. And it's a horrible existence, and it could have been fixed. We're talking about a situation when you have a pneumonia or strep throat that can be cured by a simple dose of penicillin, and this is, I believe, is murder by passive observation. You just by inaction, you're murdering your child. And to me, this is really this is the kind of neglect that borders to a crime act. Gotcha.
One of the things I would say as well is that one of the things in the Declaration of Independence is every human has a right to life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness. Anything that can be thought of as violating one of those rights is kind of not what is supposed to be established in law. These things would, under that rule, be classed as violating the right to life.
They would also be violated as the right, or as violating the right to the pursuit of happiness. If you are being forced to have a procedure that literally damns your soul to hell.
But
this
if you're
is not,
dead, your pursuit of happiness is going to be very tough.
But I would argue
Unless you're a
that
zombie.
this is not the children making that decision. It is someone else possibly
But
violating that child's right
What about
to
a
life.
child who's got an incurable cancer and there's really nothing that can be done, and the family just wants to make the child happy when the remaining time that they have and make them as comfortable as possible, and hence refuse treatment because the chemo is just terrible and the surgery is just terrible, and they just want to give them.
This is closer to DNR, right?
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
closer
Yeah.
to just a terminal outcome. There's nothing that you can do.
But there's a difference between someone making that own choice for themselves and someone else making
Well,
that
when
choice
you've
for
got
them.
a 5 or 6 year old, the only person who can make that choice is the parents.
They are the legal recognized moral agent.
Yeah.
Or a consultant surgeon, who's standing there thinking, with all my experience, I can bring this little man or this little lady and give them a really super life, and they won't even know I did anything to them.
This is
in
one of the
15 or
most
20
cheerful
years.
podcasts we've ever had.
No. But see, this is what I like, because we have some great minds around the table, and it is pleasant disagreement, and nobody's calling anybody a ungodless heathen yet.
Oh, you just wait.
Well, talking of ungodless heathens, I want to change
That's
the
a
subject
segue.
slightly, and I'm very interested in this because I don't like flying at the best of times.
Yeah.
With the president of Brazil being currently impeached,
Dilma.
should we as a country, and the Americans, and it could be the Brits or the Chinese,
We don't talk about the Brits.
support our athletes if they say they don't want to go to the Brazil Olympics for legitimate security or health reasons?
Yeah, I don't know about that. Well, that entire impeachment debacle is kind of farcical, right? I mean, the entire impeachment is engineered by Eduardo Cunha, right? and he was the main opponent for Dilma Rousseff in her re-election bid. They hate each other. He is in charge of a hostile Congress. They are all under. I mean, he's the puppet master. He's pulling the strings. The people that voted to impeach her are all under investigation for corruption.
So
I mean,
basically,
but if we
she's
know that-
Clinton and he's a Republican.
but
Well,
she, I mean,
they're all corrupt. I mean,
yeah,
it-
she's corrupt too, and she's failed. You know, her approval rating was 96. 96%. Now it's 10%.
Yeah.
You know, because her economic policies failed and all that stuff. She hasn't been charged. A lot of people that are in Congress have been charged with corruption, with specific crimes.
But
you
what
know.
about the athletes? What about the athletes?
I would
Yeah,
support
know-
him not going.
I would support him not going too, and quite honestly, I would support him not going for the same reason that we supported the Clippers when they didn't want to play. For the same reason that we supported I can't remember which football team it was, where we had this very same conversation at this table about whether or not it was the athletes' right to protest in the one
It's
way that
absolutely their right.
Well,
Yeah.
And
Chinese Lin.
They have
Yeah, I think there's one time a lot of country resisted.
South
Olympic-
Africa. You're thinking of South Africa. And
South
you're
Africa. No, I'm thinking about
The Olympics in
Germany Nazi era earlier, and
Right,
also
right.
I'm thinking about Moscow one year. There's
Yeah.
something
1980.
right.
we had two boycotts.
So-
We had the
But as
1980 in Moscow.
okay, you now live in America and do the American thing and everything else, and you have an American accent.
Oh no, she doesn't do the
Um,
American thing. That's
But if I ask you to put your Chinese hat back on again,
Right.
As a Chinese person, what would you think if you knew perfectly well that the team, the security was diabolical, really bad news, there wasn't any decent security, and the
they're likely
swimmers
to get sick.
and they're all going to get sick because of the water and everything else.
Yeah, and I think that eventually, for me personally, I think that's a judgment call on the each country, their players, the teams, what they are going to do. They have to make that call if they're going to go or not.
But as what I'm all right, and as a Chinese person, I'm a Brit, you're
right,
Chinese.
right, okay.
Would you support the team if they say, look, this is just, us going to Brazil is dangerous? What would you think as who's going to say, well, hang on, we have one of the biggest Olympic teams?
I'll tell you this: the majority of Chinese will go.
Right,
yeah.
they would go.
They will
Okay.
go.
But it's blown out of proportion. The entire impeachment process is a political process. There's no people on the streets fighting. It's a process that's going to take its course. She's going to step down most likely on her own. I don't foresee any kind of fights, any kind of turmoil. I think it's just going to be a normal political process, and the preparations for the Olympics are going okay. The two previous boycotts were a miserable failure. The 1980 in Moscow, 1984 in Los Angeles, whatever political message was intended to be sent failed.
Right.
In both boycotts. It was a disaster. I think the Olympics' mission is complete opposite. It's to isolate itself from all the political turmoil and all the wars and all international conflicts around the globe and be a peaceful assembly of nations. And the message is completely
then
different.
why give out gold, silver, and bronze medals and track which countries won how many medals? It's extremely political. The Olympics is nothing but politics. It was
Yeah.
Cold War by proxy for years.
Yeah, that's
Brennan.
true.
And I would also argue that the Olympics, the World Cup, which is also ideally supposed to be that, is the complete opposite, because countries for years have been using the Olympics, the
As a
World Cup,
propaganda
as a propaganda machine. Look at Russia doing with the 2014.
Absolutely.
With the 2014 Olympics.
Absolutely,
So
but that's not the ideal, the Olympic
It's
ideal
not the-
that Pierre de Coubertin charted.
It's not. it's not the ideal, but it's the reality of the situation.
And isn't the Olympics Committee just as corrupt as FIFA ever
Oh,
was?
yes.
Even more.
Oh, yes.
So
Even more.
how is that ever going to be stopped unless people decide, hey, this is ridiculous being put in countries like Russia and Brazil just because they've been paid off?
Yeah. I mean, the only
You
way
have
is
to get people to stop watching.
is just to
which-
cancel the Olympics and not have Olympics anymore ever. That's one.
But wouldn't that
option.
happen if the athletes spoke up and said, we are not going to participate because you're putting the profit and the political capital of
And
the...
But
they
like the
meekly
License
just go
Strata, you
along
got to
with
get
it, nothing's
everybody
gonna
to do it.
change.
The athletes, they've
Moving
worked all
on,
their lives
moving
to do
on.
that.
America is made up of 50 states, all similar but different. And
There's
as a
50
foreigner,
now?
yeah,
Yeah,
as a foreigner,
it's crazy. I know.
as a foreigner, it seems to be more difficult to run the place
He
than
must be
maybe
counting taxes.
sitting in Brussels in the middle of the European Parliament and trying to run Europe. Is it time for federal laws to deal with things like policing, elections, education, taxes, health, and so on? And I'm going to bar Chinese, Bulgarian, and British people from saying anything initially.
Okay.
I want the
Initially-
Americans,
Initially,
and
you
any
have
Brazilians who
shown
might be throwing their part in at the back there.
a true disregard for the actual politics in the country, where federal and state differences and who's responsible for what are a major issue.
Definitely.
I would.
from the beginning, there's
Yeah,
been a
right.
major issue.
This,
I would
this
only
is
add-
not something that the federal government can just say, now we're going to have to take this
Technically,
over.
no, they can't.
Yep.
On what?
They can take over whatever they want.
Yeah.
Federal powers always supersede
Any-
state and local.
Well,
Yeah.
not entirely because
As-
of the 10th Amendment.
Well, if the Congress decides if the Congress decides that they want to do something about it, then the federal government can do something about it.
The
They
They
can-
can, but they have to override one of the Bill of Rights, which that will never happen, probably.
Well,
You
no,
know
they
what?
don't have to
I'm
override
really,
the 10th
really
Amendment.
hoping- yeah.
Well,
They-
they would because that specifically states any power is not specifically delegated to the
then
the
they
national
specifically
government.
delegate it to themselves. It's not that
Yeah, it's not that.
So
difficult.
you
and,
have- you
and
have
anything can be
basically-
covered by the Commerce Clause. So
You have basically pinpointed the whole problem, really, of the United States government versus states government. This is the conflict that has been raging since the 1700s.
Yeah.
the two things that I would do is
And
at
you
least-
lot thought you won against us.
Yeah, how were those 1900s for you?
Okay, I just wanted a subtle way of getting you lot going. So let's have a European perspective from Ivo, from
Well, I mean, if
the
you look,
mountains of Bulgaria.
well, I mean, we have a similar problem. We have the European Union and the countries, which is even more magnified because the countries themselves have even more authority over their own
it's not
governments
free.
and,
Try the
and
Belgian
economy and choices. So, yeah, I mean, I think it would be, especially from where we sit right now, in the state that we are in right now, I kind of wish that the federal government would take over
Oh, please,
and put
yes,
an end to
yes.
this madness.
Yeah.
And that is a further proof that there's gotta be some kind of more like a superior executive power that can trump
Don't say that.
cases of you hate the word Trump, I know. You hate the word Trump, but something that
Drumpf. His name is Drumpf.
that can stop
Turn it.
rogue extremist state governments, which we have right now.
Yeah.
And
Are
it's
you
we're
saying
spiraling
here
out
is
of
a
control.
extremist state government?
Yes.
I agree. I'm just making sure that that's
Unfortunately, it
what
has
you
to
were
go
saying.
through the court system.
Yeah.
And increasingly, the court at the very top of the pile has become a political
I mean,
Tool.
in
Yeah,
Europe,
football.
in Europe, you have Greece who went completely rogue and out of control. On the other side, they went left.
Yeah.
They went to the left. They gave themselves ridiculous social safety nets, ridiculous work week, insane benefits, without having the budget for it, and all of this had to be compensated by the likes of Germany. So. The European,
Which is really cool.
It's cool unless you're Germany, and you had.
Yeah, well, who cares about the Germans?
The Germans. European Union had to step in and say enough is enough. So now you don't have a government. Now we're gonna govern you. We're gonna tell you what to do. Bulgaria.
So what's new?
Bulgaria did a weird experiment. Bulgaria decided to go with a 10% flat tax on everything. We don't have a progressive tax, and that's the only country I believe in the European Union, maybe Latvia or something. But we have 10% flat tax. It's a grand experiment. It's working so far, but they're watching. Brussels is watching carefully what's happening there, and if they need to, they'll step in and they'll say, "Hey, enough of that."
Could you
So
please help?
porn is taxed the same as gas,
Yeah, 10%.
and is
No.
porn taxed the same as food?
No.
Yeah, apparently.
It's important that people understand what
Porn
flat
grows
tax
progressive.
means. I have found so many
Cucumbers
actually
are needed for
intelligent
all
people.
things.
Okay, let Kathleen speak.
I find so many intelligent people who don't understand that a flat tax means everybody pays the same percentage. It doesn't matter how much you earn, you pay the same percentage.
The billionaire, the garbage man.
Because I've
everybody.
come across people who say, "Oh, well, yeah, we'll have a flat tax. Sounds like a great idea." And I say, "Well, how about people who earn $10,000 a year and can't afford to spend $1,000 on taxes?" They say, "Well, we'll exempt the people at the bottom."
It's not a flat
What?
tax.
It's not a
That's
flat tax.
Progressive tax. then.
Exactly. The definition is not known. It just sounds good.
Yeah.
All right, I want to move on quickly. We're going to try to do a number of stories today. Think about this. And there's probably only 2 or 3 people who haven't been briefed on what we're talking about today. Think about this. What book in current print has the most impressions? What book in current print has the most impressions? And that's worldwide. And
A book of stamps.
If you answer the Bible,
I
or
would
the
answer the
Quran,
Bible.
you would be wrong.
That's impossible.
It is in fact the IKEA catalogue.
That's not that. That is not. That's not a book.
No, really,
That
truly.
is not a book.
Which brings us to the following
You've
story.
seen one of those? They are books.
Oh, come
No,
on.
I am
books.
absolutely,
Hey,
completely
I mean,
serious.
if you go that way, I'll say toilet paper is the most. It's like.
Which brings
That's
us
a
to
good
the
point.
following story. There are those who believe that the Bible or Quran are holy writ, and that laws and the way we conduct our lives should follow literally from those books.
Yeah.
We have laws in many different countries that follow from those books. For that, of course, is literally what they are, books. So, a very interesting little legal case popped up the other day. A Nebraska inmate who was bored professed his allegiance to the divine flying spaghetti monster.
Oh yeah.
And he has just lost his
Hey,
bid,
you said that without bowing.
demanding that prison officials
He doesn't
accommodate
have a
his...
colander on his head
Wait
either.
for it. Officials accommodate his Pastafarianism
Oh yeah.
faith. A federal judge
That's
dismissed
great.
the suit Tuesday brought by Stephen Kavanaugh, who is serving a 4 to 8 year term on assault weapons charges at the Nebraska State Penitentiary.
He's a
Now-
Pastafarian.
Now, the point is, the court found that FSMism
With the religious sauce.
is not a religion within the meaning of the relevant federal statutes. And the point is, he's saying, but it's a book, right?
Yeah.
It's a book.
It's a book.
Mr. Judge, it's a book.
It's
It may
following-
not be as big as the IKEA catalogue, but it is a book. And in the book, it says that I'm allowed to do these things.
To worship the flying spaghetti monster. By the way, the flying spaghetti monster probably has a spaghetti sauce for blood.
Yeah.
It definitely has meatballs.
Yeah. I mean, I
Yeah,
can
but
be
is it spicy or sweet sauce? That's what I want to know.
I can be boring and explain exactly how they explain away the book thing, because there's been other things that have qualified a religion, like an established place of worship.
Scientology.
People who-
Science fiction books.
Yeah. Well, there's actually established places of quote worship for Scientology.
What I want to know is where the
And people
where the
who-
pirate costumes come in.
I have been on
Because
the
they're
internet
fun.
and have been quote a citizen of the internet, kind of like Lewis is, for since I was like 10 years old, and I still don't understand Pastafarianism.
It's a
I am
religion.
on
There's
Reddit
nothing to
all the time and I
understand.
don't
It's
understand
every- It's all about
Pastafarianism.
belief.
In religion, you do not ask. I don't understand it.
It's very simple. It is the belief that a flying lump of spaghetti first created a mountain, trees, and a midget.
Sounds good to me.
Trees and a
I
midget.
will do what we always do at this time in the podcast. we will turn to Ivo,
Yeah.
the Lord of Pheromones from
Yes,
Bulgaria,
yes.
for one of
Is that
his
why I'm feeling so
latest,
groovy?
latest
Invention.
famous
Too close to
invention.
Well, last couple of weeks we talked about the bubble shower, which is a great invention.
Which
We
has
all
already
agree.
been taken and is now being in production.
Yes, and then we had the fake Super Bowl ring, magnet,
yeah, that
magnet
was a good one.
ring.
Yeah, we
that
like
was
that,
great. I didn't have one for today, but I just came up with one. Actually,
Man, you're good.
No, actually, this afternoon I was parked in a freaking parking lot at Marcelli's downtown, and this parking lot drives me crazy because it's very small and it's very hard to back up out of the parking lot. So I came up with an invention. It's the two-way vehicle, the two-way car. Basically, you have a car, right? And then you have captain chair that's kind of like a bar stool on a
Right.
rotating axis.
Yeah.
And you just spin on the rotating chair, and then on the other side, you don't have back seats. You have the exact same dashboard, the exact same steering wheel, and the exact same gear shift, and you just drive away. So you
I like
go
it.
either way.
I like it.
One of the-
it's
they
great.
actually-
Brennan Conroy,
they
our
made-
correspondent from Ferrari.
No, on the British Top Gear show, they actually James May made a rudimentary version of this where they cut in half a Saab 9000 and
And
an
put
Alfa
another.
Romeo
Oh,
sedan,
yes. I
welded
remember
them
that,
together
yeah,
in the
yeah.
center.
Bastard.
It almost worked, but when someone undid the steering lock, it
Oh.
just damage was everywhere.
Imagine how cool it
So
would
what
be
you
to
are-
just turn around and drive.
From an engineering
Exactly.
perspective, you could charge a lot of money for something like that.
Oh
You
yeah,
are talking about a vehicular push me pull you.
There you go. There you go. Perfect.
Why only two directions?
Yeah, you can go for
There's always
directions.
one, isn't there?
There will be, yeah, there will
There's
be
always
left,
one,
right.
ladies
yeah.
and gentlemen. Okay, so a push me pull you car. Will it take off? Well, we know that the
No,
soapy
no
shower,
flying cars.
Bubble
the
shower.
bubble shower has taken off. Kathleen has been looking through the media, and as always, she tends to get disturbed when she's right in the middle of a story. And she seems to have got a story, and she's missing some words for the story. I'd like the panel to think if they can come up with those words. Kathleen, off
Not
you go.
necessarily looking for the right words. I'm just looking for interesting words here, okay?
So this is a Mad
Okay.
Lib?
Yeah.
Is that
yes,
what we're...
yes.
Okay.
Here's a headline that I spotted, and then it had a big black box, and it said, DailyMail.com tries out $99 alarm clock that startles you into waking up with
Kim Kardashian.
blank. With
Orgasm.
Actually, I was going to go off of
$99 card. Would a $99 alarm clock would give you Kim Kardashian to work on? Wait,
It's a very popular
okay.
clock.
By the way, well,
Yeah?
I'll tell you something.
Can I
after-
substitute Maggie
yeah.
Chung as opposed to...
Okay, yes.
Actually, something that I could think almost like an Evo invention, an alarm clock that wakes up by shaking your bed back and forth.
shaking
so like
your bed.
Is
sort of like an
Ah.
earthquake.
Into waking up with. So we've got to fill in
There's
the
a-
blank.
There's a clock actually called Clocky, and it's for sale, that actually wakes you up by starting to ring, and it jumps off the and starts
Yep.
running around and you have to chase it.
It's called a
Right.
cat.
No, it's called Clocky, and
Yep.
you have to catch it. There's no other way.
Okay.
You know?
You gotta
Jared.
get out of
So-
bed, you gotta
Yeah.
find it, you gotta turn it off. Yeah.
Tries out 99 alarm clock that startles you into waking up with.
With a
cat.
slap. With a slap.
No.
Okay,
What
since
is
The
it's Daily
answer
Mail.
is yes.
Oh, I was just going to say, since it's dailymail.com, I'm going to go with Queen Lizzie.
It's actually electric shocks.
Great day in the morning.
It's a thing that's on your wrist,
No,
and
thank
at the
Oh,
set
come
time, it goes zap.
No, thank
Nope,
you.
not gonna
Yeah,
happen.
and
All right,
it
next one,
works.
next one.
Within 2 days, you
Next
are
one,
waking
next
up
one,
2
next one.
minutes
I wonder
before.
what this will do to your morning
Okay.
wood.
Okay.
Oh,
Oh, I don't know what that means. Okay, here's another one. Blank. The first part of it was missing. Blank, a surprisingly useful skill in space,
Fellatio.
says Tim Peake. Tim Peake is a British astronaut, by the way. So they get at least 100 feet off the ground, British astronauts.
I am not from Havana.
Useful.
What is a
thing
useful skill in outer space?
to be able to poop on.
What is a good useful skill in outer space?
Surprise, who's
A
good?
useful
Hey,
skill
I-
in outer
I-
space. I think it's pooping. be able to poop.
Oh,
That's not a skill.
no,
they
that's
have
not
suction
skill.
cups.
That's
to
more
do
like a
that.
gift.
All right. Okay.
All right, the
What-
answer is flat pack assembly. In other words, putting together those IKEA cabinets.
That makes sense.
That's
Being
There
able
could
to
be
do that is
anything.
All right,
something
one
that,
more.
Yeah.
I've
One
actually
more.
never been to IKEA.
Before we move to Dr.
Really?
Orlando. and
I've
the
never
word.
been to it.
It's fun.
Michigan Governor Rick Snyder vows to blank for a month.
Drink the water in Flint.
No, I think I know what this one is. Survive off of food stamps.
Ooh, that would be a good one too.
Survive in downtown Detroit.
I got it.
Childhood Detroit, yes.
Think.
Ooh.
No, I don't think he has a brain.
No, actually, it was drink Flint water.
Okay.
He actually,
Right on,
he
Brennan.
actually
No,
found
that was him that got
that was you.
He
I had
managed to find a house in Flint that didn't have particularly high particulate
Then-
counts, and so he got water from them and vowed to drink it for a month.
Wow.
What he didn't understand was that at one point during the month, their lead particle count had jumped way high. So if he got water from that particular day, he's
He
dead
turned
man.
into Led Zeppelin.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to Dr. Orlando, the very wise Dr. Orlando. He is, in fact, a very wise man. And the word with Dr. Orlando.
All right, folks. I'm going to introduce a new word.
Don't we all have
Hopefully
to
it's
say
a new-
amen?
Well, you can say I'm in when I'm done.
Okay.
That's
It's
what the
too bad
wife
you're
does
missing
anyway.
out on
I'm
this
in.
lovely PowerPoint presentation.
She just says thank God.
Yes.
I'm in.
All right. So today's new word is ultra-crepidarian.
Ultra
Ultra-crepidarian.
creepy.
Ultra-crepidarian.
Well, it's
Crepidarian.
obvious. It's a crepidarian who's more.
Yes.
Exactly.
And that means either a person that is older than 110. It means something super smelly
Crepidarian.
or a bullshitter.
A crepidarium. Okay, Lynn's going to go for this.
How do you spell that?
The name.
Ultracrepidarian.
Crepidarium.
D-R-I-A-N.
I'll go with 2. I'll go with something super smelly.
I'm going to go with 3.
I got to go with 1. I may have to go with...
I'm going for 3, a noun, a bullshitter.
Yeah. Yo. Oh.
Crepidarium.
Ultra crepidarian is definitely a noun, and therefore it's number 3.
It is, in fact, number 3.
Yes!
A bullshitter. The actual
Yes.
definition is one that gives opinions outside one's realm of knowledge or expertise.
Gosh, I can use that
So
one
Sam
so
Brownback.
much.
Yeah.
I know who I could use that on.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Come in.
This has been
You've
your
been
word.
listening to Wednesday Night Undressed from Conroy's Emporium, where you can get nearly anything your heart desires. We'd like to thank the panel, Ivo, Kathleen, and the very wise Dr. Orlando, and of course our special guests this week, Chris Magerkurth from the
Yay.
Russian Army, Brennan Conroy, and we'll call her Chinese Lynn, 'cause, and she's waving. Not to forget sound and editing from Eric Holcomb. We gave Neil Rasmussen the weekend off. Tom Conroy, of course, for letting us do this every week. You must try his steak fries. And for running probably the coolest proper pub in the region. From me, your host, Jeremy Taylor, I should say, that you're very naughty for listening, but we will see you next time here on Wednesday Night Undressed.com.
Hey!